F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
Qualifying for the sprint race at Austria for the Austrian Grand Prix weekend is about to get underway. Thanks for joining us. Ben Edwards here alongside me, former McLaren F1 mechanic Mark Priestley, and we are looking forward to what's going to be a very, very interesting qualifying session coming up. We've seen a free practice session earlier on today, which was set by Max Verstappen. But Mark, what we saw from that practice session was that not everybody showed what they could do in the final stages, because we'd seen Mercedes very quick early on, we'd see Lando Norris fast as ever. It's just that they didn't actually kind of stack up in that order in the practice session.
Yeah, that's right. The final timesheets didn't really tell the whole story. So we're actually set up for a really fascinating qualifying session ahead of tomorrow's sprint, where I don't think any of us can really call it. Yes, Max Verstappen was dominant, and we know that he is quick. He's got a very quick car. This is a circuit that definitely suits their car, but he definitely also hasn't got it all in his own way. I think McLaren's Lando Norris very, very close, but the Mercedes, as a real surprise, looked almost like the pick of the bunch at the early part of the session this morning. So I'm really intrigued to see how Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are able to perform in that Mercedes that's been totally revamped over recent rounds, and they're really seeing results of that now.
Absolutely right. Well, let's see what happens. Max Verstappen, as I say, set the pace from Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, who were up in the top four. Hamilton only fifth, but was fastest at the earlier stage, as you said. So we're into sprint qualifying shortly. They will be coming out on circuit in a couple of minutes' time, and it'll be a 12-minute first part of sprint qualifying, and they will have to run the medium tyre. So the way it works in sprint qualifying, slightly different rules to what they run in qualifying for the Grand Prix. You have to run the medium tyre for the first part of sprint qualifying and the second part of sprint qualifying, and then you can run the soft tyre in the final part, which will determine the top 10 on the grid.
Yeah, that's right. So in this morning's practice session, there was a lot of work going on the different tyres, both that soft and the medium for a lot of people, but also the hard tyre as well, because when we're coming to a race situation later in the weekend, that could well be an important tyre to have a look at too. So a lot of work gone on. Of course, on a sprint weekend, there is only the one practice session. We had that hour earlier on. A lot of work going on, fairly intense session, but that's it. There's no more practice. There's no more learning and understanding and trying and experimenting other than within what are now very competitive sessions. So I love this format. I don't know about you, Ben, but I really like this sprint format as an experiment that it's been over recent times with Formula One. They're tweaking things, changing little details like this tyre allocation, like the sort of way the format is laid out over the weekend. But I personally think it adds something to a Grand Prix event.
It's going to make it great fun. And I tell you what, the fans who are out there at the moment, and they're sitting in the sunshine. It is a beautiful day now. Actually, we had a little bit of cloud earlier, but it's a beautiful day in Austria now. They are definitely getting keyed up, because we're into a competitive element straight away. They're not watching a free practice session. They're into a competitive session that will determine the grid for the sprint race. So it is exciting, and it's such a beautiful place too. I mean, I've always loved going to the Austrian Grand Prix. It's very much in the countryside. You're up slightly high. You're not right up in the mountains, but they're up at 660 meters high. It's a very green countryside. It's very beautiful.
It really is very picturesque, and I guess somewhat typically Austrian, which is lovely. Yeah. It does pose its challenges in that, the altitude is a factor to some extent. A little bit harder to generate downforce with the slightly thinner air, I guess. But also, though, importantly, the weather can change dramatically and quickly. And yesterday at this circuit, we had really heavy rain. Once it stopped raining, the sun came out, as it is right now, and things dried up very, very quickly. This morning was cloudy. Now it's literally bright sunshine and a temperature of 27.5 degrees, which is quite a lot hotter than this morning, actually. That will play into how these tyres perform. But there is still a threat of rain and even thunderstorms as the weekend rolls on.
Very true. And we're expecting the lap times to be incredibly close. Now, already this year we have had identical qualifying times for the first time in many years, when Russell and Verstappen had the same time in Canada to the thousandths of a second. I wouldn't be too surprised if we end up with people doing the same here, because we've seen how close it can be in the past. Trying to get the lap times identical here, it is quite common almost.
Yeah, it really is. It's such a short lap, and actually the shortest lap in terms of lap time on the calendar. It's not actually the shortest lap in terms of distance, but it is the shortest in lap time. So there's just not the time or the space to stretch the cars out and open up big gaps over what is a really short lap. So you do tend to find they're very, very close. We saw it this morning even, not a lot separating the top few cars. And I expect in qualifying, when everyone's right on the limit, we'll see more of that. So the tiniest little, it means, of course, the tiniest mistake can drop you a number of places, but also getting it right can also make a huge difference to your finishing order.
Totally right. And the track is actually open now. Nobody's launching themselves out onto the circuit just yet. It is a 12-minute session, so they've got a bit of time, but it is open and people can get out there as and when, and we'll see how everybody does. I have noticed in recent years, actually, the Haas team has gone quite well here. It's one of those tracks that sometimes suits particular teams. Haas have had at least one car in the top 10 in sprint qualifying the last 2 years. They finished the Grand Prix here a couple of years ago in 2022 in 6th and 8th places with Mick Schumacher and with Kevin Magnussen, and Hulkenberg last year finished 6th in the sprint race. It was a funny sprint race though, because we had a damp start, wet start, and he was one of the first to switch onto slicks. Today it looks like we've got a dry qualifying, but as you said, possibility of rain at any time, but probably not for this session. Maybe over the rest of the weekend we shall see. And it will be basically about getting 7 key corners. I mean, it's a nine officially, officially 10 corners around here, but really there are only 7 proper corners, aren't there, to deal with?
Yeah, that's right. You know, in terms of braking zones and hitting your apexes and managing a corner, yeah, you're right, only 7 of them, which means fewer opportunities to either get things wrong or right, and it means that every one of those 7 becomes even more important than perhaps on another circuit. So it does give opportunities for the likes of Haas, the teams further down the grid, because the gaps are so small. You only need to make a relatively small improvement, like I said, or get something just right, get the details perfectly right, and it can jump you up the order by a considerable amount. And for these teams that are often down the back or even towards the midfield, that can be really important, both in terms of how you finish and how you set yourself up for a race, but of course the points and therefore the financial reward that comes from all of that at the end of the Grand Prix weekend can be game-changing.
Absolutely. Well, we shall see how this goes. Lewis Hamilton was very quick earlier today, but didn't run on the soft tyres. Funnily enough, though, he got kicked out in the first qualifying session for the sprint race last year here in Austria, so he definitely won't want to repeat that, and he did show some very, very good pace, so we shall see how that goes. But we will lose 5, remember, whatever happens in this, and we've got 9.5 minutes to go. It's still nobody out, although they are beginning, you can hear, they are beginning to fire up, they are beginning to take tyre warmers off, and I think we're going to see some cars out on track any moment, but they've got to get on with it, because 5 cars will not get through to the next stage, and you've got to prove yourself, you've got to get the lap times in.
That's right, and the other reason they've got to get on with it, as they do now start rolling out of the garage, led by the 2 Mercedes, interestingly, the reason they've got to get on with it is because traffic here is such an issue. When you've got the early part of the session, particularly SQ1, with all 20 cars on track at the same time, over that short lap that we talked about, there isn't enough space to really spread the cars out. So finding the gap is critical, and if you do stumble across traffic, it can affect your lap. So with only 8.5 minutes left, you need to nail that lap, you know, first time out, get a banker in, but if you don't, you're going to quickly run out of time. So find yourself a new gap, reset the car, recharge the battery and go again.
An interesting layout of this track is that there are no absolutely high-speed corners, are there, where it's like nearly flat out. There are none of those kind of corners. It's more kind of medium speed, slowish. There are no really tight ones either. It's all kind of medium speed corners, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, which obviously presents a different set of challenges and will reward cars that have certain types of characteristics. We know that, for example, McLaren has traditionally over the recent months struggled in the slower speed stuff. Well, there's less of that to worry about here, so they should like it more. We know Red Bull very similar. There's no bumps and really no curbs that you have to manage, which has been a weak point for them, so in that sense it should reward the Red Bull car. And we also expect Ferrari, really, with this type of corner characteristic, to also be to excel, to have a better weekend than perhaps they had last time out, for example, in Spain. But in the practice session this morning, it was actually Ferrari of the top 4 teams that looked like were struggling most.
Right, Lewis Hamilton going over the line now for the first timed lap, so we will watch and see how he gets on. Oh my goodness, he nearly lost it through turn 1. That was a big save. He held on to it, but my goodness, he so nearly lost it.
How did he hold on to that? The car was at 45 degrees to the angle it was supposed to be going at. It was a blisteringly fast first sector, I think, but that's ruined the lap time, unfortunately. He'll have to bail out of this one. He can learn something, of course, but he'll have to bail out of the actual lap time. He'll have to reset, he'll switch the settings to recharge the battery, but he got it all horribly wrong and lost traction at the rear, and I mean, amazing job to recover it, but so early in the lap to have lost it so quickly.
He's not actually backed off though, interestingly. And he's running to the gravel and he's still on it. I tell you what, he's really going for it at the moment. Despite that little error, he has decided to go for it, and although his first sector was not the best, Russell, funnily enough, has just gone 2.5 tenths quicker through that first sector by not making the mistake he made. He's still going for it, runs out towards the edge on the last corner without going over the curb, sets a pace at 106.4. I think that's going to be beaten soon.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, you're right. George Russell beat him probably by about the amount in that first sector that he lost by going so sideways. But yeah, he's still pushing. He wants to learn as much as he can. He's still got 6 minutes on the clock, so he needs to get that banker lap in, as we talked about. The opportunities may run out if you do find yourself in traffic, so keeping going and keeping your foot in where possible, I suppose, gives you something of a banker. It's not going to be quick enough yet, though.
Hamilton's actually lost the time for track limits, understandably, and it's Russell who's just set the pace at a 105.7. So Hamilton has no time officially, so he's going to have to get on with it again. He doesn't want to repeat what happened last year here, where he didn't get through into the second part of qualifying in the sprint race. Carlos Sainz is on a pretty good lap. Let's just see what he does as he goes over the line. He goes second. Yeah,
good lap from Carlos Sainz. Lando Norris on an absolute flyer. He was the guy that we saw setting early pace before a mistake on his flying lap at the end of FP1, but he's now on a very fast lap, which looks like it'll punch him up to the top of the order. Of course, you've only got to get into the top 15 in this session to safely sail through to SQ2. Lando Norris coming to the line. He's third quickest. What is he? A couple of tenths, just over 2 tenths off George Russell at the moment. So that's McLaren versus Mercedes, and at the moment it's Mercedes that wins out on that one.
Well, let's have a look. Russell is still fastest, yes, and it's the same as Leclerc goes over the line for Ferrari. It's Russell, Sainz, Norris, Leclerc at the moment. You're listening to Pierre Gasly's Alpine, which is just about to go over the line. He goes 9th fastest. We've still got plenty of no times for the likes of Verstappen, Alonso, Perez, and of course no official time for Hamilton, having lost that time. We will see Verstappen soon. Ocon goes over the line. He goes 6th quickest. Verstappen on a lap right now. Let's just see where this puts him. Yeah, he does go quickest, not by very far though.
Yeah, well, 74 100ths of a second. That's nothing over George Russell. Lewis Hamilton under some pressure. You know, what you don't want to do is put yourself in the position that Lewis has found himself in, because the pressure, which is already there, ramps up dramatically. As Ben said, time deleted for Hamilton, so nothing on the board. So he really only has one more opportunity to nail it, and with the challenges that the traffic around here presents, that's not a given.
Right, well, let's see what the Aston Martins can do. They didn't show much pace earlier. Only 14th for Alonso. Stroll is following, so we'll see where Stroll goes in a moment. But this is not looking very... it's better for Stroll. That's actually much better than Alonso. My goodness, he's gone 5th. Alonso down in 15th. What a big gap.
Yeah, that time for Stroll all came in the final sector of the lap. The last part of the lap was where he really excelled. So that car looking good through the higher speed sections, that is the last part of the lap. But for some reason I didn't see Alonso's lap. I wonder if he was compromised by some traffic. We've got 3.5 minutes left, so there's enough time to get round, reset and go again, but we are now cutting it fine.
Two of the great champions in the drop zone at the moment, Alonso and Hamilton. Oh, we just saw a replay of Hamilton popping into a gravel trap. And he didn't lift off, he just carried on going for it. That was out of turn 5.
Yeah, so Hamilton's been in the pits and is now, this is a replay we're watching of the earlier lap. He's been into the pits, put some fresh medium tyres on, and is now on and out lap is Lewis Hamilton, which means he now will get just that one opportunity. He's got to on this outlap, not only prepare the tyres, get everything in the right temperature window, but he's got to find himself that gap and hope that nobody else stumbles in front of him. Imagine a yellow flag in this moment. This is his one opportunity. He needs everything to go right. The pressure's on. He's just coming through the final part of the lap now, where he'll start to wind things up and give him that one opportunity to go for it.
So it is Verstappen fastest from Russell, Sainz and Norris. Sainz and Norris just on outlaps again, and we will see if everybody comes back out. Down in the drop zone at the moment we have Alonso, Alex Albon in the Williams. We have Daniel Ricciardo, absolutely desperate for some top results in the next couple of races if he's to hold his position in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton in the drop zone at the moment, as we know, and Zhou Guanyu, the other one in that drop zone. But we could see some changes just ahead of the drop zone. We've got Hülkenberg, Gasly, Bottas and Logan Sargent. They all certainly need to go, and it may go further up the list than that.
Yeah, so the second...
Oh, this is interesting. Hamilton...
Bit of racing on track.
He's trying to get past Verstappen before he starts his quick lap, but Verstappen doesn't want him to, so he's going to have to drop back now.
Yeah, that's really compromised Lewis, because it really is right towards the end of the lap with just a couple of corners to go. Lewis having to really back out, and he's now let other cars through. This is not the preparation he needed, because it just ramps that pressure up even more. He's had to now bury the throttle coming out the final corner. It won't be the perfect preparation. Still big opportunity. He's come up alongside or right behind one of the Saubers, which might have given him some sort of tow, but might also just distract him a tiny bit. Yeah,
that was a bit odd. That was Bottas actually getting out of the way to allow him through, but it's not a great first sector.
No, it's not. It's not anywhere good enough to trouble the leaders. The question will be, is it going to be good enough to get him outside of the bottom 5? It's not bad as he goes to the middle sector, still putting in personal bests, but of course he hasn't actually set a lap time yet, so that's easy.
He's got more traffic ahead. He's got a little bit sideways there as well through turn 4, and there's a lot of traffic. Hopefully they are keeping out of the way. They are. So the second sector coming up, this is where he ran into the gravel early. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a real challenge. He may get through to the next stage, but this is not a great lap.
No, he needs a blistering final sector to rescue this. He's coming down now through the final couple of corners, and we'll see him emerge onto the start-finish straight. Just about keeps it within track limits, nails the throttle. Just about. He's in 11th at the moment with 15 seconds left on the clock. Is anyone else going quickly?
Lewis Hamilton in 11th place in the drop zone at the moment. We have Hülkenberg, Alonso, Albon, Ricciardo and Zhou. Let's see what happens. We've got the last few to come. Alex Albon about to cross the line. He just gets up to 15th.
And I'll tell you what, Fernando Alonso on a quick lap. Fernando Alonso could jump himself up. He does, up to P11, pushing Lewis Hamilton down to P12, but I don't think anyone else is going to trouble Lewis.
Oh, Alonso's just gone 11th, in fact, and that means that Hamilton is 12th, as you say, and then that means that Sargent has now been pushed down. He's just about to come over. Sargent's managed to nip back up. That's pushed Hülkenberg out. And we've got one of the cars running wide out of the final turn, and that's Tsunoda, who has managed to just get back on once again. But has Tsunoda made it? Well, I think he has. He's 14th, and I don't think he's going to lose that position. We'll just have to wait and see. Here comes both the Alpines. Pierre Gasly on a lap here. He's currently down in 19th position. He's nipped up to 11th. Yeah. So that means Ricciardo's out. Let's just see what Ocon does over the line. Well, Ocon's safe already. That means that we now know who we've lost. Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, Bottas, Albon and Zhou Guanyu.
So maybe no major surprises, but again, disappointment for Ricciardo being beaten by his teammate on a weekend when he just had to do better.
Looks like we are safe.
Yeah, that was for Lewis Hamilton. He is safe, but that was not an ideal first part of qualifying for the sprint race, was it?
Yeah, that was uncomfortable for Lewis Hamilton, and I'm sure for the team. Interestingly, the two Williams, that's not an order we've come used to, is it? Alex Albon being out-qualified by his teammate Logan Sargent. I think that's the first time that's happened, in fact.
Yeah, it is, because there was one time where Albon got a time deleted. Oh, Tsunoda had a spin. Right, I hadn't realised that he'd actually lost it and then ran wide.
Yeah, the car is all good, but tires.
Understood.
So that was Tsunoda coming out of the final corner on a lap, which he actually got away with it, so he is safe. But that would a lap that might have put him further up, just dipped a toe into that thin gravel trap that they've included in the circuit for this year to stop people from breaching track limits. And that's exactly the intention of it, isn't it? If you push over beyond track limits, you find the gravel and it ruins your lap. So I guess in that case it's working.
Absolutely, I think that did work, and he was careless to put his wheels into the gravel trap. That was a mistake from Tsunoda. He was quite lucky there wasn't a car close behind him in a way, and he spun off safely and rejoined the track. But as you heard, he didn't think the tyres were any good anymore. But he has made it. Tsunoda has just got through by the tiniest of margins from his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. He will be into the second part of qualifying. But we have not got Daniel Ricciardo nor Nico Hülkenberg, and that's a bit of a surprise because Nico's often done well here, and Magnussen was 10th quickest in the other Haas. Bottas has failed, and so has his teammate Joe. So the salvos just are not working in qualifying. And as you say, for the first time, actually officially, I think, Albon has been out-qualified by his teammate Logan Sargent, and that's from last year through into this year. He's never been properly out-qualified by Logan Sargent before, but it has happened here in Austria for the first time.
Yeah, it's a real surprise. I mean, it's great stuff for Sargent, where he needs a little bit of positivity surrounding him. It's all been fairly negative in a year that could well and is highly likely to be his last in Formula One. That's a little positive boost. I think from Hülkenberg's point of view, that's really disappointing, because even this morning, actually, it was Magnussen that was the more comfortable of the two Haas drivers in the practice session. So maybe that's a theme that's running through the weekend. I think we sort of take the final times, particularly at the top end of the order, with a little pinch of salt in terms of, I'm not sure that's necessarily the overall running order, because some people, of course, are just doing enough to get through in this session. So although Verstappen tops the timesheets ahead of Russell and Sainz, I do still think Lando Norris has a lot more to offer than fourth place around this circuit. He's just got to put it all together at the right time.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be fascinating to see how this all develops over the next session. We're going to be going into the second part of qualifying for the sprint race, and that will decide then the top 10 will then go into the final stage. So it's getting tougher and tougher, and the times are going to be remarkably close. The top 10 in that session were separated by just over 7/10 of a second, so between 7 and 8/10 of a second, which we can kind of expect. It's often a second between first to 10th, but this track is likely to be less than that.
Yeah, and I think when we get into the actual top 10 shootout in SQ3, I think that will be closer. A couple of things to contend with, of course. We are on the medium tyres for that first session. We'll be on the medium tyres again for this second part of qualifying. That's mandated in the rules on a sprint weekend. And then we'll move to the soft tyres for the final part of qualifying, which I think you touched on it earlier on, is a tyre that's the Mercedes drivers haven't yet used around this circuit this weekend, so that's going to be a journey into the unknown. But also for those who have used it this morning, the temperature has gone up quite a lot. We're now at 27.7 air temperature and a track temperature of 42.7, which is a good 5, 6, 7 degrees higher than it was this morning, which will make a difference. So all the learning that happened in the first part of the practice session, it's going to be a slight tweak and a slight change to be made as they get into qualifying on that soft tyre too.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll see how that goes, and it could make it very, very exciting, the last few moments of that top 10 shootout. Bit of work going on the Mercedes at the moment.
Well, that's Lewis Hamilton's car that did crash across the curves and ended up at a 45-degree angle coming out of one of the first corners around the lap, which wasn't the way Lewis wanted to start that lap. He somehow hung on to it and lived to fight another day and did scrape through. But yeah, there'll be some damage, I've no doubt, to the little intricate parts of the floor underneath, and the team will just be doing whatever they can in this short amount of time they've got to try and minimise any negative impact of that damage.
It's funny, actually. Lewis Hamilton looks very fired up this weekend. It was just that he was a little over-fired up on that first flying lap that he did in SQ1.
It feels like we've got a rejuvenated Lewis, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because the car's come back to life, almost so has Lewis, and we're seeing, even from his interviews, you see him, he's in a much more positive place. And I know he was a bit self-critical after the last event, saying that he didn't maximise everything himself. He knows he's now got a car that's capable of challenging at least, and I think for any driver, but particularly somebody of the calibre of Lewis Hamilton, they kind of need that, don't they, to get that final bit of whether it's motivation or energy or whatever it is, that last bit of something, I think we're now seeing it again with Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's also a little bit of analysis work going on Yuki Tsunoda's car, no surprise, because he'd gone off. But the second part of sprint qualifying is now underway, and we're beginning to see cars get out a bit quicker this time, maybe because they're all finding themselves getting held up in traffic, and they now realise they've got to get out there and try and get a clear run if possible. And we've seen Verstappen head out, we've got Leclerc heading out now as well, and the track is getting busier and busier. Lovely sunny afternoon in Austria as we prepare over the weekend for round 11 of the Formula One World Championship. But this is a sprint race weekend, and what we're enjoying right now is qualifying for the sprint race, which will take place on Saturday morning before we get into the official qualifying for the Grand Prix on Saturday afternoon. And we'll bring you all of the coverage throughout the weekend. I do hope you're enjoying watching and listening in this stage to the qualifying. We'll tell you what we're looking at and we'll explain what's happening. But right now we're going into a completely new mode. Of course, nobody's set a time yet in SQ2, Sprint Qualifying 2, and they all have to start again to be in the top 10.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got 15 cars now on track rather than the 20 that we had earlier on. So traffic, a little bit less of an issue, but still an issue because it's a very short lap and not a lot of space, but a little bit easier to navigate that. Everybody on the medium tyre, everyone with a fresh set of medium tyres for use in this part of qualifying. And I think we're seeing everybody come out because it's a slightly shorter session, and everyone realises that we've just seen highlights of it from the first session where somebody makes a small mistake, can easily bring out a yellow flag, that can ruin your lap, and you need to give yourself enough opportunity that you can have more than one go at this.
Absolutely. Well, let's see how this goes then. Now it is already beginning to get quite exciting once again as Max Verstappen gets onto a flying lap. Now we can watch him into turn one, and that looks pretty effective. Yes, he has just a little bit of wobble through the corner, but that was because he was flat out on the throttle, didn't have to lift, and it looks as though the first sector should work pretty well for him as he heads down.
Yeah, so let's have a look at this Red Bull car, which we think should suit this circuit. It's definitely looked strong in the hands of Max Verstappen at least, but nice and tidy so far. It's really interesting. It's a great circuit to watch a Formula One car go round because it really is a great place to see a car on the limit. It's got big downforce around here, a lot of aerodynamic downforce sticking the car to the floor, but you're also really reliant on a lot of the mechanical abilities of your car. It's about getting both of those right to get the perfect lap, and you've got to be really super accurate around here. With only the 7 real corners that you touched on earlier on, there's only a few opportunities to excel or make those mistakes. So at the moment, Verstappen looking pretty strong, but he has been outpaced in the first sector by his own teammate Sergio Perez.
Yeah, you're right. Perez has gone quicker in the first sector. Over the line goes Verstappen, so he sets the initial lap 105.186, and let's see whether Sergio Perez is even quicker. He comes across the line 105.6, so it is first and second for Red Bull at the moment, as we wait for everyone else to start setting some times. Lando Norris is about to come over the line for McLaren. Can he compete? Well, he splits them, but it's a little bit off what Verstappen has done. Verstappen really, despite his first sector not being so good, the rest of it was very impressive, and now Sainz goes second.
Yeah, good lap from Sainz, but keep an eye on George Russell, who's on an absolute flyer in that Mercedes, a Mercedes that's had a real sort of new turn, a new sort of lease of life unleashed upon it. His teammate Lewis Hamilton will be the first of the two Mercedes to cross the line. He's quick as well, but Russell, I think, is the one that's going to really upset the guys at the front.
Piastri's just gone second fastest, you say. Hamilton's pushing hard. We can see that again through the final corner, but actually it's not that great. He goes 5th fastest. What about Russell? With that brilliant first sector, you're listening to Russell as he crosses the line, and he goes second. Still a little bit off Max Verstappen, but it's now Verstappen, Russell, then Piastri. So we've got 3 different cars in the top 3 places. In fact, 4 different cars in the top 4 places. We've got a Red Bull, a Mercedes, a McLaren, and then a Ferrari. What a lovely mix.
Isn't that wonderful, eh? How long has it been since we've been able to say this, that we genuinely got 4 teams in the mix here? And so, yeah, George Russell just over a tenth, 0.139 behind Max Verstappen. As everyone will start to roll back into the pits now, they get the opportunity to put another set of those medium tyres on. Everybody has to use the medium tyre, as is the rules in sprint weekends for this part of qualifying. The team can have a quick look at the car, check anything, download the data, a little bit of a debrief. Very little they can actually do to the car at this point. Everyone in part firme condition, so maybe a little adjustment of switches, a little bit of front wing angle is one of the only things you're actually allowed to change. And then it's about resetting, about understanding where you want to be on the track, get yourself in that right gap, where you left some time out on the table. And we're talking tiny amounts here, but that's what they need to try and find for everybody to shuffle their way up towards the top.
Charles Leclerc was right on the verge of going over the track limits, but I think he just about stayed in. Even though he touched into the gravel, he did not actually quite go over the track limits. But in a way, touching that gravel teaches you that you're going too wide.
Yeah, I think it's a really good adjustment they've made to the circuit here. Just a very thin strip of gravel on the exits of turns 9 and 10, which were a particular problem last year for people breaching track limits. Now there's absolutely no advantage to for the drivers to push the limits there because the cost is so high by stepping into that gravel. So it seems to be a little modification to the track that's working, and one that I suspect we may end up seeing rolling out to other tracks as well.
Just over 4 minutes to go in the second part of sprint qualifying in Austria. Currently Max Verstappen is the fastest from George Russell second quickest. We're just monitoring a replay of Max Verstappen when he was out on track, and he also just ran a little bit wide, but without going too wide, I don't think. It looked pretty neat and tidy.
Yeah, it did seem like a good lap, I have to say, but we know there's a little bit more time, particularly in the first sector, even from Max Verstappen, because his own teammate Sergio Perez went quicker in that part of the lap. So there's more to come potentially from that Red Bull, which seems ominous, but I also think there's more to come from others as well. I think the two Mercedes have the potential to really be quick here, both Hamilton and Russell. I also think we still haven't seen Norris deliver what we saw glimpses of in the practice session, so hopefully that's a case of just nailing it in the moment. We saw last time out in Spain he delivered an absolutely perfect lap in qualifying, didn't he, when it mattered to put it on pole. Can he do that again?
Yeah, we did see all three Brits in the top three places in practice earlier today, but it was a slightly different time, of course. Temperatures have increased, we're on different tyres now than they were earlier, and every team is now focused on fast laps. That's what matters. You're listening to Lance Stroll's Aston Martin right at the moment, and Stroll yet to do a timed lap. Quite a few people have yet to do a timed lap in this second qualifying session for the sprint race, and we'll see whether he can get into the top 10. Yuki Tsunoda's out on track as well, and we'll see whether he can do anything. Same with Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Logan Sargent, who has managed to make it through to Q2 despite Alex Albon failing to do so in the other Williams. So plenty to look forward to, but I tell you what, it's going to be busy out there with 2.5 minutes to go.
Well, it is, although it's almost like they've all got together and decided, well, the top 8, you go out first, then when you come into the pits, we'll go out. It's a very strange scenario.
Yeah.
We've only got half of the cars that can go out at any one time. The top 5 or 6 or 7, right down to Lando Norris, have done their flying lap, are now in the pits and about to probably emerge to prepare for their out lap, whilst the rest of them, down to P15 and Logan Sargent, are all now on their flying lap. So they're all out of phase of each other, which means that the guys coming out of the pits now will have to navigate and make sure they stay out of the way of the guys on the flying lap. So it's a difficult place, always a difficult place to position your car around this circuit, but something they're all now familiar with, and this is, as you say, exactly where it matters.
So yes, you're right though, with a lap time, fast lap time here of 1 minute 5, 1 minute 6. You don't need to be out of the pits too early, but we are getting to 1.5 minutes to go, so you need to be coming out if you're going to have another go at it, unless you're confident, and Max might be confident enough to just stay in the pits at this point. So Lance Stroll has just set a time that has put him 9th fastest. We're waiting for a whole bunch now to put in lap times, which could affect who's going to make it into the top 10 shootout for the sprint race. And we're riding on board listening to Esteban Ocon's Alpine at the moment as he comes into the final corner, doesn't run too wide, comes across the line, and Ocon is 9th quickest, just pushing Stroll down to 10th.
Yeah, so a few people going quicker, not enough yet to trouble the top few, but it is Sergio Perez, the man who's on an absolute flyer at the moment. He's down in 8th at the moment. He is slightly out of phase, as I said, with the main group at the front, but he's once again put in the fastest first sector of anybody, even above his teammates, so he's very happy in that part of the lap. Can he continue it through? He's coming through the middle sector now, so we'll keep an eye on his times.
Pierre Gasly's just snuck into the top 10, so that's both Alpines in there at the moment, whether they can hold it. Magnussen's just done the fastest first sector of anybody, amazingly. Logan Sargent has not done much on his lap. He's down in 14th. We're listening to Magnussen now with that brilliant first sector. Let's see whether Magnussen can pop up into the top 10. Oh, not quite. He's 11th, misses out by 49 thousandths of a second.
Very, very close. What a good lap, though, for a Haas. I think that's still a reasonably decent position if he can end up staying there in P11. That's pretty good. Sergio Perez continuing his lap. I just don't think it's fallen away. I'm not sure exactly what happened. We haven't seen it on board. In fact, he's bailed out of it.
Yeah.
So that's disappointing because Sergio Perez is in P8.
Check a flag out. Yeah, he probably should be safe because I'm not sure we're going to see too many other improvements here.
No, I think you're right. I think there's nobody else going any quicker, which is why Sergio Perez has bailed out of that lap. So he probably is safe, and that's fine. Meaning also that Pierre Gasly will make it through.
Absolutely. So it looks like we've got it sorted. It looks like Kevin Magnussen has only just missed out on the top 10, but the others to have failed are both Aston Martins. That's painful for the team. Lance Stroll out qualifying Fernando Alonso, but they have both failed to make it into the top 10 in the sprint race. Tsunoda 14th and Logan Sargent 15th in the end. So that's how it has ended, and that is definitely... It is a blow for Aston Martin. I mean, we keep seeing the updates from McLaren, from Mercedes, but Aston Martin just seem to be going backwards at the moment, don't they?
Yeah, exactly right. And I think we've heard Fernando Alonso urging his own team on to try and bring those updates. They need to keep pace. I mean, let's see if he Stroll.
Big slide in the last corner.
Yeah, that looked lively.
That was a big slide from Lance Stroll. Right in the final corner, the rear end just stepping right ahead, almost into the gravel. Just managed to hang on to it. But they do need to bring these components. The rest of they were in a fight with Mercedes at the start of this year. Now look at the difference between the two, and it's all about that development direction.
Yeah, no, it's a bit last year. Of course, Aston Martin started really strong and then dropped away a little bit. This year they didn't start quite so strong, and yet they are still dropping away. I don't quite understand why they're not being able to improve the cars. Maybe it's just this track or whatever, but we've seen this a bit more regularly. Listen to Sargent.
I didn't quite get T1 and T3 right. Sorry.
Yeah, good effort, Logan. Plenty of opportunity time.
Well, Logan Sargent being very honest to his team and saying he didn't get it quite right, and they've appreciated what he's done. He's managed to get it into Q2. He's going to be several places ahead of his teammate for the sprint race. He will be 15th on the grid, just assuming no other penalties will be applied, but that, of course, we won't know until later. Nothing necessarily at this stage. He would be in 15th place, and at the moment Albon will be starting 19th, so a bit of a gap there, and Alex Albon will be disappointed. Maybe he had a problem on his flying lap, but it hasn't quite worked out for him on this occasion, and the Williams struggling a little bit here in Austria, as it did a little bit last time out in Spain, but it is Sargent who's managed to get into Q2.
Yeah, I think Alex Albon was asked if, Spain's often a bit of a sort of a hint as to what's coming, isn't it, for a lot of other circuits. It's one of those sort of average circuits, or at least it used to be in the old calendars. And he was asked, is your performance in Spain going to be replicated as the season goes on? And of course he said, I hope not, because it was disastrous. But look at where he is right now. It's not gone well for him. So they need to make some major improvements and get things right. Of course, the nice part of this weekend is they'll get another go at it. This is for the sprint, which will take place tomorrow morning. They will get another chance to qualify, of course, ahead of the main Grand Prix, which will take place on Sunday.
First time this year that Alpine have got not only one, but both cars into SQ3, so sprint qualifying 3. They have not had a car into that session until now, and they are definitely making improvements. We keep seeing them, at the bottom end of the top 10, but they're beginning to score points quite regularly, sort of 9th, 10th places, and once again, they've both made it into the top 10. Ocon was 9th fastest, Gasly 10th, so that's definitely good for Alpine, and we shall now, of course, be building up to see who is going to be taking pole position for the sprint race this weekend. A few minutes time before we get the final part of qualifying underway. Remember, we've only had 2 sprint races so far this year, and the 2 pole sitters have been Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, and we'll see whether it's both of them fighting or whether George Russell and maybe Lewis Hamilton are going to try and join in that battle for pole.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I don't think I can call it. I don't think we've seen the best of anybody yet, which is fine as long as you peak at the right moment, which is of course now. That's what we're all aiming for. So this is going to be really interesting, you know. Just looking at the Alpines, as you said, scraped into the top 10, which is a really good position for them to be at the moment. When they were asked about what's happened, what have they done, what have they, you know, what's turned their fortunes around, I think one of the slightly worrying things was I don't think anyone knows. I don't think they're quite clear as to what, haven't brought a major component which has delivered results. It's obviously been a few little things and some results have gone their way. Canada, they were a little bit fortuitous. But it's a good place to be, but it's much nicer if you know why you're there, because then you can continue doing those things to continue the rate of improvement. So probably still some work to do, but they'll take the results at the moment while they're coming.
We shall see. Well, in the meantime, fans are enjoying the fun of seeing how this grid will work out for Saturday morning when we get the sprint race underway, or late Saturday morning. It'll be entertaining to watch the sprint race, and then of course after that they'll get into qualifying. There's a little bit of work going on the back of Max Verstappen's car around the right rear suspension, or is it bodywork? I'm not quite sure.
It's most likely to be bodywork, just because those are the sort of flimsiest bits, the carbon fibre bits that do get broken off quite regularly. As you go through gravel traps or bump over curbs, it's very common to just break off little flick ups and bits of carbon. So this is, although it looks like something out of the ordinary, it's not that unusual. The problem is they just haven't got very much time to do it, so it's a sort of make, do and mend type scenario when you're in the midst of qualifying, but I'm sure it won't hamper him too much.
Both McLarens in the top 10. Oscar Piastri once again backing up the pace, and if anything, well, he was quicker than Norris, as we know, in that last one. So let's see what Oscar Piastri can do. Charles Leclerc just getting ready to go in the Ferrari, former winner here of the Austrian Grand Prix. Let's see whether he's going to be able to have that sort of pace. When he took a victory here, it was not from pole, but he has had a pole here. That was in 2019. So we shall see whether he's going to be able to make the step as well. But as I mentioned, Oscar Piastri will be keeping an eye on him, a man who's had a sprint win in the past and yet to have a full Grand Prix win, which of course Lando Norris has done just recently. Both of them will be pushing hard to try and get up front in the final part of qualifying. So we've got both of the Red Bulls, we've got both of the Mercedes, both McLarens, and we have both Ferraris and both Alpines. So it's all combinations of teams in this top 10 shootout that is going to come up in just a few moments.
Yeah, well, if you look at those 10 cars that are left, you could probably suggest that the two Alpines are likely to take the final few slots, meaning that the 8 cars that we would imagine would be in the fight for the front 8 places are going to be in exactly that fight. But the order that they finish, I really have no idea where it's going to end up. I think there's a lot more to come from Sergio Perez, who finished only 8th in that previous session, but we did see him bail out of a lap that started very, very well. We also saw him earlier on this morning do a very quick first sector, then make a mistake. So we never really saw the full lap potential from Sergio Perez. So I wonder if he can join that mix at the front. We haven't seen him in the timesheets up there, but I definitely think there's some potential. I think Lewis Hamilton's got a few little things to iron out to get that perfect lap, and still Lando Norris, I've got something in me, says Lando Norris still has more to give, and I want to see him up there challenging Max Verstappen.
Well, let's wait and see. Max Verstappen is looking for a 5th consecutive pole position here. Okay, that is for the Grand Prix, and we're looking at the sprint race, but it's still his sort of dominant force at the moment, and we shall see whether he's going to be able to hold on to that, or, as you say, is he going to be under threat not only from Lando but from George Russell, from Oscar Piastri, from Lewis Hamilton. I'm not sure the Ferraris have quite the pace, but we shall see. And remember, they're going to be on the soft tyre, so everybody, for all of us, it's going to be slightly new this time, going out on the soft tyre. They've been doing the laps on the medium compound tyres up to now. Now they've got to do it on the soft tyre, and so this is quite a challenge for the driver. I mean, I was thinking a bit of Lewis, nearly losing the Mercedes through turn 1 on his first run in the first part of qualifying. They've now got to do the same, but on a different tyre. You've got to know it at the top of your head how it's going to behave.
Yeah, true. And you know, on one hand you could sort of say, well, surely it's easier because I've got more grip with the softer tyre, so surely it's easier. But it's not, because you're pushing so much harder. You're still taking that tyre to the limit, and yet you don't really know where the limit of that tyre is, particularly in the hands of Mercedes, who haven't actually run it yet this weekend. So this is a real venture into the unknown for them. But we are going to see lap times tumble as a result of that. This is the cars at their absolute quickest. This is as quick as a Formula One car is capable of going around this circuit. And I always think, you know, for me as a fan of Formula One, this is some of the best moments in this sport, when we get to see driver and machine at its absolute limit, as close to as fast as it can go as possible. And that is what we're about to witness here.
Track temperatures up at 43 degrees now, so it's a decent track temperature. Wind speed not too high. We could begin getting in for some windier speeds, higher speed wind over the course of the weekend. We'll just have to wait and see. That can have a little of effect around some of the corners of this track. The crowd cheering in the background, waving and getting all excited. An awful lot of Max Verstappen fans here in Austria. No surprise, that has become very much a standard thing in recent years. Of course, a lot of Red Bull support as well at what is the Red Bull race, the Red Bull Ring as it's called nowadays. Used to be the Österreich Ring originally, but it was a different layout in the old days when this track was first created. But it still works extremely well in this slightly shorter version that is run in the modern day, and it's going to be entertaining just to see who ends up on top. And I'm wondering, when are they going to get out? We've only got 4.5 minutes and nobody's been out yet.
No, I think with a soft tyre, you really only get one shot at it. You're going to get the best out of that tyre. They're all brand new tyres, of course. You're only going to get one shot at getting the maximum lap time out of it. Because we talked about this circuit being so short, you can't afford to lose a little bit and have a second go, even though it's compromised, because a compromised lap around here will put you 10th as opposed to inside the front row. So I think they're just waiting and waiting. Less of an issue again with traffic, because there are only going to be 10 cars on track. But I think this one is all about leaving it late, finding the right gaps, of course, and then just pushing it for one all-out flyer.
Yeah, this is going to be mad when they get out there, and there could be some mistakes as well. There is going to be an incident involving Perez and Stroll investigated after the session, something to do with race directors' instructions and maximum delta time. So that's something that will be looked at. Potential penalties, but it's not a major thing, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes later on. Of course, penalties can always be awarded later on, but we're just focusing on the fastest times that will be coming up in a moment. Engines are beginning to fire up, but still nobody actually onto the circuit just yet. So it's going to be a last-minute surge to try and take pole position for the sprint race.
Yeah, and it's about to happen. Here's Russell.
Let's get cracking, mate. Everyone's going to send it now.
Yeah, Russell's saying let's get cracking. He's waiting to come out. Both Mercedes now are about to be sent, and yep, here they go. Hamilton is ahead of Russell.
Yeah, so if that order remains the same and Hamilton stays ahead of Russell, there is, of course, the potential for Russell to get the toe along this long straight from his own teammate, which may be some part of their strategy here. I don't know how, you know, maybe that because George Russell is higher up in the championship, that's often how these things are decided. Who gets the opportunity to get the toe is often decided because of that. But everybody now emerging from the garage, and there are only 2.5 minutes left on this clock.
I'm a bit worried about the last cars coming out here. Will they get across the line? I think they will, but there's a lot of slowness going out of the pit lane because they all want to be in a clear space. So the last cars, I think it was an Alpine that's the last car coming out. I didn't actually see whether it was Ocon or Gasly yet. Listen to Russell.
So this might be tight on time for some people.
Yeah, that's what we think too.
Well, that message you just read out about Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll being investigated for the maximum delta time, the race director denotes how slow effectively you can go on circuit. So you're not allowed to have your delta to the nominated lap time slower than whatever the race director's notes say. And it's all about this positioning on track, which is exactly why right now we're seeing everybody in the pit lane holding up. They don't want to go slowly on the racetrack for fear of getting breach of that regulation, so they're doing it in the pit lane. before they enter the track itself. So this is going to be, I mean, there are definitely cars that are not going to make it.
This is not good news for Ferrari as well, because Charles Leclerc just going very, very slowly and now getting out of the pits, but I'm not sure. I don't think he's going to get around, and I don't know whether he had a problem. Okay, so now we are beginning to see the fast laps begin. Going across the line, Lewis Hamilton, presumably, whereas Russell is behind him by quite a long way, actually. I thought, as you said, he might get a tow, but Russell quite a long way. So Hamilton will definitely get a lap in here, whereas some people may not get a flying lap in. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, you're right. I think Leclerc is going to really struggle. I don't think he can even get round quickly enough to do it. We'll keep a close eye on him, but I think he was the last guy to come out of the pits. Just looking at the tracker, yeah, I think it's going to be Leclerc that's going to struggle most here, but let's keep an eye on the guys that are out there, because of course George Russell on a flight, Lewis Hamilton going pretty quickly as well.
But Piastri's just got quicker than both in sector 1, so yes, you're right, both of the Mercedes are on a good pace, but Piastri even faster in sector 1. Hamilton's just set the pace in sector 2, but Russell's gone a little bit quicker in sector 2, so this is all change all the time. Hamilton's got some cars up ahead of him. Hopefully that's not going to hurt him through the last 2 corners. First part okay, second part don't run too wide, perfect out of the second lap. That is Leclerc who's ahead, and I think Leclerc's just missed it. I think the flag was already out as he crossed the line. Hamilton goes fastest briefly. Let's see how long he can hold on, because here comes his teammate George Russell. He goes quicker by over 2/10. Great lap from George Russell. Now who else is going well?
Well, guess who's going well? Max Verstappen on an absolute flyer as well, together with Lando Norris. Norris crossing the line. His teammate Piastri goes quickest. Norris, though, almost going quicker again.
Piastri fastest, but no, Norris goes even faster. We've got a McLaren 1-2 at the moment, but of course we've got Verstappen on a mega lap as well. Carlos Sainz is about to cross the line. Carlos Sainz goes 4th quickest, beats Hamilton. Hamilton's been pushed down to 5th already, but here comes Max Verstappen. Verstappen trying to beat Norris. He's done it by 0.093. It's always close here, but the crowd go crazy because Max Verstappen has taken pole yet again here. This is for the sprint race, and he has done it by 0.093. Perez crosses the line. He's gone 7th, Ocon 8th, Gasly 9th, and as you said, Charles Leclerc failed to set a time. So our order is front row, Verstappen, Norris, yet again, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris on the front row. Second row will be Oscar Piastri and George Russell. Third row, Sainz and Hamilton. Fourth row, Perez and Ocon, and the fifth row, Gasly and Leclerc. Leclerc will be utterly disappointed by that.
Yeah, he will. I don't even know what happened. That's surely got to be down to a team error in terms of judgment of when to send him out. The winners from that, of course, Ocon and Gasly, mean that, well, we talked earlier on, they're almost certainly going to take the last 2 places. No, they're not, because Leclerc's taking that. The biggest disappointment, other than that from Charles Leclerc, for me, is Sergio Perez, all the way down in P7 again on a circuit we know he could do better.
That is P1, Max.
Yeah, not bad. I think Gala was a bit too quick, with the traffic. We ran out of tyres. But all good.
It's interesting from Verstappen talking about running out of tyres, and what he means is because they all had the hurry up, they weren't able to prepare the tyres in the normal way on the outlap, so he took too much energy on the outlap just making sure he got round before the checkered flag, which Charles Leclerc didn't do, and it meant he ran out of grip or life in those tyres towards the end of his flyer.
Well, it's an impressive time. This is 8th ever sprint race pole around the world, and in terms of poles here, he's had plenty in the past. Of course, it doesn't count as an official Grand Prix pole because that'll have to be done tomorrow in a separate qualifying session. We saw it was close, and tomorrow, who knows, Lando Norris might be able to sneak it back and get pole position for the actual Grand Prix. But this means that Max Verstappen and Lando Norris will start together on the front row once again for the sprint race here. They have both had fun in sprint races already this year. I wonder how it's going to work out, but for Max Verstappen, he has certainly controlled it brilliantly today. But I think McLaren will be very happy. They've got their cars in 2nd and 3rd, and I think Mercedes will be a little disappointed in the end that George Russell ended up 4th and that Lewis Hamilton ended up down in 6th place with Carlos Sainz in between them.
Yeah, I agree. I think we and they probably thought there was a little bit more to come from that Mercedes. What we're seeing, though, over recent races, which I'm loving, by the way, is a real clear picture that Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, there's nothing between them. They're almost in a league of their own as well, ahead of everybody else, but those two are so tight. I am so here for this. This is great.
Yeah, we shall see how it goes. They do seem to be the battlers at the moment. Verstappen versus Norris. It's working well, but for Ferrari today it wasn't great. Well, I mean, Carlos Sainz managed to get a reasonable run in 5th place, but for Charles Leclerc not to get a lap in, my goodness. And a man who's always gone well here. I kind of came in expecting Charles Leclerc to be right up near the front, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's go down and hear now from our pole for the sprint race, Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen, congratulations, incredible pole position. You were the fastest in the first sector, the fastest in the last 2 corners, and you gained the pole position. How was your lap and how is your feeling to be on pole in front of this crowd that is cheering for you?
It's always great to be first here in front of basically my home fans, my home Grand Prix. It was a good day so far. It's really been nice to drive the car. I think immediately the car was well balanced, and then of course you make some little adjustments going into the sprint quali, and everything has been working really well. So good start to the weekend. Still of course a lot of things to do, but I'm happy with today.
Well done, congratulations. And tell me please about tomorrow, because Lando Norris was the man that was the quickest in the middle sector. You were on pole by less than 1/10. Probably is the man that is forcing you tomorrow to fight for the victory. How do you think it's going to be the weekend for you?
I mean, we'll find out tomorrow. I'm not really too stressed about it. I'm going to enjoy my evening and we'll try again tomorrow.
Well done, congratulations. Max Verstappen on pole.
Well, there we go. Max is very happy to be on that pole position for the sprint race, as you can understand here. And of course, remember, more points on offer if he takes the victory. 8 points on offer for a sprint race victory. But he's going to have a fun battle with Lando Norris. That was fun. And of course, we've got lots to look forward to tomorrow, Mark, with the race itself for the sprint race, and then of course the all-important qualifying coming up for the Grand Prix.
It sets us up for a really exciting weekend, doesn't it? Because the competitive order is so close. And, as you rightly said there are points available in that sprint. And these points for the championship, with the championship now closing up, for the likes of Max Verstappen, this really counts. You could have probably looked earlier in the season and said, well, he could take or leave a sprint. He had such domination, but not anymore. So he needs this win. He needs to maximise it, as does the likes of Lando Norris. So I think the sprint could be really fascinating.
Well, you can join us on the BBC Sport website for the sprint race, 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. Thanks for joining us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.